Hi, I'm Liana Antonovich, and I'm recording this video because I think it is easier to record a video and ask a question in person rather than have somebody read the typed lines. It's a different feeling. My question to the breeders, and I guess not so much a question, but a suggested hypothesis that I'm inviting the warm blood breeders to think about is about the length of a horse's back. Where is the optimum? I began my riding career back in Belarus and Russia, and we trained for dressage, show jumping, and eventing Orlov trotters, and then later the Russian trotters, and then later German and Russian trainers. The feeling in training those horses, they were different in conformation, was very, very different as well. Orlov trotters were closer to probably Holsteiners and Oldenburgs. And these were magnificent horses, very versatile. They were bred initially by Orlov brothers in the Tsar Russia to both pull a cart and carry a soldier and go cross country and jump and for a long endurance as well as for a parade. Most of them were silver or dappled gray horses of significant size. Orlov trotters had significantly long enough and strong back. Think of a Ford tractor or Chevy tractor, truck, not tractor, sorry. It needs to be a certain length between the wheels, front wheels and the back wheels, so that the pulling would be effective, so that the horse could pull a cart and depart into the motion quickly, as well as could stop the cart also quickly. So that required rectangular conformation in the horse, just like we see a rectangular conformation shape in a truck. After the war, the Orlov horses lost their prime purpose of carrying the carts, and they were used in horseback riding disciplines as well as in trotting races. Horses were very, very good, all around, versatile. They could race 3 to 4, 5 years, and then they could be reschooled to work in a cart, in agriculture, or to go under saddle. And while riding those horses, we felt immense ease of riding those horses because of strength and length of their back. These horses were able to use their long backs to swing. You hop on a horse and it starts swinging from the first stride, whether it is walk or trot. And reschooling these horses into a balanced canter would be like 6 months and off they go. And it's balanced canter with a lot of rounding in the croup and good engagement of the hindquarters, because Orlov trotters had enough body in front of them to swing the hind end before they would hit the front leg. So they were brave in attempting the swing, in rotating the pelvic and swinging and turning the pelvic joint. which gave them the speed in the races, but also they were very agile in accordion training and in transition between the gates, within the gates, and takeoff for jumping, and developing speed, quick turns in the show jumping course or in the cross country. They also had very good endurance. However, Orlov trotters competed with American standardbreds, and those were much smaller horses, under 16 hands high, and Orlov trotters would be 16.2, 16.3, up to 17. The smaller American horses would be much shorter in the back, lean in the body, shorter as well, and they would go with a much higher speed. Government and sports organizations of the former USSR felt like they wanted to compete with these horses on the same hippodromes, locally, internationally, and they started breeding, crossbreeding Orlov trotters with American standardbreds. And that's how the Russian trotter breed occurred. Russian trotter breed was slightly bigger than American standardbreds, but lighter in the bone than Orlov horses. Not gray, mostly bay, just like Americans. And significant difference was that those horses were much shorter in the backs, like significantly shorter. These horses were much more difficult to retrain after trotting in a buggy, back into cart, or into any work on the saddle. They had worse canter. Canter was a disaster to train. It took a year or two before a horse would be able to develop a balanced canter. And these horses would lose the regularity of rhythm. And they would very often not give their backs. They would get stiff in the back, hollow. They would be hollow, and it would take a lot to slow them down because their paces were like sewing machine. Slow them down, relax, and so it would be a continuous work, a continuous fight for relaxing backs of their horses and achieving that like metronome-like swing in the back. That was very difficult for them. So very few of the Russian trotters actually were able to switch to and be noticed in Olympic sports of dressage, show jumping, or eventing. It was not in them. There were a lot of Orlov horses that made it very far, including Balagur. Everyone remembers gorgeous white Orlov horse Balagur, who competed up to Grand Prix. But if it would be a Russian trotter that who was able to achieve some good performance in either of the disciplines on the saddle, it would be a horse with a dominating phenotype of Orlov horses' bloodlines. So my trainer, Yakov Shedrovitsky, when we rode those Orlov horses and Russian trotter horses with a lot of Orlov horses' bloodlines, he would make a note, hey, you don't know how lucky you are that you're riding these horses. They're so soft in the back. It is easy to see it. Walk, trot, canter. There is never any shock that is calming compression that's coming to the rider's spine. It was so easy. And he mentioned if once you try to ride a German warm blood or any other warm blood from Europe, you will feel the difference. Those horses are very hard in their backs. And we're like, why? Those horses were bred to be soft and this, though, to have the swinging backs with the rider, etc. Why would that be difficult? And sure enough, one day we've tried in a nearby town. We've got an invitation and we mounted crosses of German warmbloods with the Budyonnovets and Donskoy breed from the south of Russia and Ukraine. That is a very big difference. From our air mattresses, which were Orlov horses and the best of Russian trotters, all of a sudden we were sitting on the wooden benches. And we began learning that apparently to those horses, the warm bloods, it requires a lot of stretching in the frame, riding them forwards and downwards, 20-meter circles, letting them trot and open up gallop on a straight line, bringing them back, some jumping, a lot of lateral movement, shoulder for, shoulder in, travers, renvers, so that to relax their top line and to allow the swing, and then strengthen that hind end that would go under. It was the whole PhD in riding. What we would get pretty much intuitively and naturally from Orlov trotters, we had great difficulty with the warm bloods. Later, to our state stud, our head of breeding operations brought from Germany some German Trakehner mares, and I believe one or two stallions. One of them was a leading breeding stallion, Kentaurus. And the same story repeated for us with the German Trakehners. They were more compact. They were as big as Orlov horses. In fact, Kentaurus was 17 hands 1, so he was substantial. And cannon bone circumference in the front limb was 21 centimeters or greater. So those were substantial horses, both mares and the breeding stallion. And even though they had the same height, etc., they were more short-coupled. Both the stallion and the other one, and I believe it was about 10 mares. And for the mares as well, mares looked slightly longer than the stallions, but they were still shorter than Orlov and Orlov horses and Russian trotters. As the offspring hit the ground and we started working with weanlings, yearlings, 2-year-olds, 2.5, it was time to begin putting saddle, leading gently, breaking by 3. Well, what's breaking? It's you hop and you walk trot, and then eventually in 3-4 months, as a horse offers canter, you canter. So the same problem with the back was very obvious in the warm bloods. And we looked back then, hey, where the saddle is on a horse and how much room is from the back of the saddle to the side joint. Yeah, so a side joint, everybody knows, You follow your finger from the horse's croup down, and all of a sudden it is like a small dip, and then the spine goes again. So the section between where the last rib of a horse departs, the lumbar and the side joint, that distance was significantly different in Orlov horses and best Russian trotters and in the warm bloods. Could that relate to the ease of swing, collection, engagement, and later carrying capacity by the hind end to the length of this lumbar? Assuming, of course, that it is not a sway, thin connection, but it is a thicker bone and longer, well-muscled connection. So pretty much we in September, as young horses would be brought from the fields, they would go for 4 months, March, April, May, a little bit of April, but May, June, July, horses would be young horses, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, sometimes mixed up. They would be in the fields in very, very large groups, guarded by people, riders, and some dogs. And those groups would be substantial, like 150 horses, 200 horses, in huge, huge, huge fields. So once these horses come back to the stable to be assigned to training stable, to different training stables in the state stud, we were hunting. We were picking and hunting which horses we want to take. So what we did, we quietly would go very far away to the far village where those horses would be roaming, and we approximately saw, okay, which horse has height, cannon bone, and length of back. That's what we were looking for, these 3 criteria. And okay, we would put an eye on this one, on this one, on this one, and then we would decide to make internal handshakes, which horse goes to whom, and how we would make our coach to give us what we wanted. You know, kids, we had a lot of fun with the process. Yeah, so when these horses would come back, they would be all dirty, and pieces of dust and mud because they rolled and hair was long. It would be glued all over. We didn't care. We come to the horse in the stall. Even if it is covered with mud, we put a saddle on, and then we add a helmet. So the saddle, the pommel of a saddle ends right here. We put a helmet, and we want to make sure that a side joint is behind the helmet. Because the horse with this back will be very comfortable to ride, will be very easy to collect, because this is the section which flexes a lot and allows pelvic tilt, sit of the hind legs, yeah, engagement, and later helps to develop carrying capacity. So horses where a side joint would be on the wedge of the helmet or inside of it, we would reclassify to be immediately horses for sale, like pleasure horses. And if a horse would have additional other advantages, like soft in the mouth, kind, good legs, strong feet, etc., then we would classify this horse for school programs and pioneer camps. See, based on the length of the back, we would classify horses right away in the stall. And then what we did is uh, we would organize them. Okay, all these serious horses are in this part of the stable, all these kind of simpler school horses are in this part of the stable, and there were some horses that would be like question mark. It's kind of good but has some imperfections. What do we do with it? So as our coach allocated horses to us riders, the allocation was not like, oh, you're a good rider, you get all the best horses. No, no, no. It was, you're a good rider, you get to have 2 strong high potential, 2 high pose. You train 1 question mark and 1 definite underdog for a camp. So our package, our portfolio was supposed to be 4 horses. And if we had time, then we could take another 2 horses from what's left. There were situations when we would all of a sudden, from a question mark, the horse would bloom into something phenomenal. And there were situations where a high po horse would develop so very slowly, or we would identify a flaw in a horse, like incurable problems with the eyesight, or things to that nature, that would not qualify the horse into competitive sport. So there was some shoveling within the first 6 months approximately of the purpose of the horses, of their ultimate goals for the training. And I have to mention that once I had a complete underdog that looked like a crocodile with huge Belgian warm blood head. Nobody knows how did he get that head. Thin swan neck. His neck was twice as thin as his head, but very good body, like an Orlov horse would have. That was the best horse I've ever ridden. Unfortunately, he was not pretty enough. He was buckskin. He was not pretty enough to be allocated into high paw group. He was allocated into the school horse, potential school horse, and that was his career, and that's how he was sold later. But incredible ability. How easy it was for that horse to learn everything. Cadence, bounce, accordion, canter pirouettes, half steps. It took 3 weeks, but he was an outlier, obviously. But why I'm making this video, and I'm addressing this video not only to the riders but to the breeders in North America. I'm like, hey guys, yes, there are inspectors. They are very professional people. They see a lot of horses. They put their scores for conformation, temperament, rideability, this and that, gaits, la la la. I do not know if the length of the back and structure, the function of the back is has a significant place in their scoring system when they do inspection for the horses, just for young horses, no matter what age, and in the stallion approvals, stallion testing and approvals, which is fine, because right now we live in the time where information is not exclusive to short groups as it used to be before. right? There were short groups of breeders, of judges, of officials who had knowledge. Right now, there is so much knowledge and it's accessible to everyone. And I think, can American breeders think about that aspect and look at their mares and evaluate stallions that American breeders choose to breed to, also from the point of view of the function of the back, how long the back is from behind the pommel, the back part of a standard 18-inch saddle, to the SI joint. Now, SI joint is not the bump. SI joint is supposed to be in a good bred horse on the loin before the bump. So if the helmet goes, this is the saddle, this is horse's back, then the helmet goes, this is SI joint somewhere here, the bump will be slightly after, approximately an inch or two after a side joint, and then the croup starts going down. Horses with this conformation are typically the best and healthiest performance, both in dressage, show jumping, and eventing. What is happening, I see, is that a lot of breeders, whether they're riding breeders or not riding anymore, we lose the feel or whatever, begin giving preference to horses that are very, very short in back. Their ribs are short, squeezed, means their spines are above the ribs are short. That means that the whole system underneath the rider's saddle is more fragile. And also the lumbar section is very, very short. Pelvic is essentially, with the pelvic bones, are maybe 2 inches away from the last rib. And it is very difficult for such horses to do any bending situations. And they have difficulty swinging in the body, because that's essentially where they swing. They swing with that lumbar section. And they have difficulty tilting their pelvic for zigzag in the hind end. Another disadvantage relates to the balance of entire horse's body. Before, if you mount a horse with a good back, a rider would be sitting, I'll take my lipstick, okay? A rider would be sitting in the middle, and with the horse slightly on the bit, the rider would feel like, hey, I have half a horse in front of me and half a horse behind me. Now, with this increasing shortening of the horse's body, some even call it, we breed giraffe conformation. The rider, I'm turning it, you see this golden ring on my lipstick? The rider sits in here, and the rider has shoulder and neck, 2/3 of a horse in front of him, and 1/3 of a horse behind him. This is a problem. These horses cannot stand, they cannot engage hind end under. Horses need body. It's okay if the neck, like in some mares, necks are not too long, but bodies are longer if it's reversed. If the front part is shorter and then there is the body, this horse will be able to do so much more in dressage, show jumping and eventing than the horse that is opposite like that. I guess my video is I'm pretty much finished with my message. I would like to bring attention of the North American breeding community to this problem, to this issue. We do not really pay much attention to it. We ask the riders, and riders say, most of the riders, oh, shorter back is great. And why they say so? Because when a horse has this type of conformation, when the horse is short on the back of the saddle, the rider feels like horse's hoofs are so close to the saddle, to the projection of the saddle bones. And there is pretty much nothing to worry about. It's already there. There is no need to train for 6-9 months. And for the horse that is longer behind, it does require some basic training. And they don't want to do it. They want to come and buy, ideally 3-year-old, with all the kicks and giggles out, and so that the hind end would be under the seat bones. So if we breed in favor of mass market, we breed the wrong horses. That's what happens. And then look, just recently, watch the Grand Prix tours. I was amazed to see pretty much everybody, except the Spanish guys on Andalusians and Lusitanas, who are by definition compact, like a car with one door. They compete on horses with good backs, helmet behind, a side joint, bump, and the croup goes, including Isabel Worth. Just don't listen to me, go watch. Best horses have good long backs. Of course there are exceptions. Iberian horses and Charlotte Dujardin's horse is an outlier because he had extra animation in his hind leg, but his back, his lumbar it's very, very short. So there are horses who, despite their tiny short bodies, because horses are very good at compensation, they are survivors, they become so much leg goers and they compensate for the movement and for the comfort of the riders on their backs by shock absorbing with their pasterns, with their elbows and shoulders, with their stifles and hocks and fetlocks behind. And then we are like, oops, suspensory injury. Why? Because there is no enough back swing to produce the movement and the bounce. The back swing should take at least half of the overall momentum, in the bouncy trot or in a very collected canter or in a medium canter. It's the back. And the limbs only support, synchronize and support with this movement. But if the horse's back is short, it does only then the rest goes on those wonderful long limbs. Let's think about it. And maybe there would be ideas how we can do some research, some observations. And I would be proud if American breeders would come to certain conclusions and then educate Europeans on how to run inspections and what to look for. The quality of the horses that are being bred in North America is astonishing, and I very much believe that thought leadership in breeding might eventually come from the US. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye.